Hello, BYWG podcast tribe. This is Dr. Noah. For the month of February 2019, we have a very special product of the month and an awesome book of the month as well. As a reminder, all the links for the product/supplement of the month and the book of the month will be listed in the show notes and iTunes, in our weekly newsletter, and on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab. The special 10% discount code for the supplement of the month, Stress Rebalancer, is No More Stress. That's capital N-O, capital M-O-R-E, capital S-T-R-E-S-S. But more about this in a minute. Our book of the month is Beyond the Pill, a 30-day program to balance your hormones, reclaim your body, and reverse the dangerous side effects of the birth control pill by Dr. Jolene Brighten. I had the pleasure to interview the author, Dr. Brighten, and you'll be able to listen to this interview in the month of February, I believe February 11th. The product supplement of the month is Stress Rebalancer, one of the 8 brand new BYWG supplements. So many people, particularly in our offices, and we could see it online, are running busy lives and juggling so many things that eventually our systems can get overwhelmed. We call this sympathetic overload. But what about the chemistry of stress? Cortisol is the hormone produced under stress, and science has found some interesting answers to supplement this key stress challenge. One of the key ingredients in our BYWG Stress Rebalancer supplement is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is a fascinating supplement or herb, with scientific studies supporting its benefits in managing the effects of stress. Lowered cortisol, the stress hormone, less anxiety, lowered blood pressure, improved testosterone levels in men, better concentration, and decreased inflammation markers for arthritis and heart health are also recorded in double-blind studies. This is just one of the 14 ingredients in our selected blend of adaptogens, herbs, vitamins, and amino acids to support health, reduce cortisol levels, and provide unique nutrients for cell function and protection. We could go on and on about this unique supplement, but you can read more about it at the links found at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. Remember, the 10% discount code for this very special supplement is No More Stress. That's capital N, lowercase o, capital M, lowercase O-R-E, capital S-T-R-E-S-S. Enjoy the upcoming podcast. Hello and welcome back to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer and I'm your co-host. I came back to the office after a short Christmas break, and sitting in my enormous mail pile was an advanced copy of our guest's book today, Beyond the Pill. Recognizing Dr. Brighten, and after looking at the content, I knew we had to have her on the podcast. So BYWG Tribe, I am happy to introduce to you Dr. Jolene Brighten. Good afternoon, Jolene. How are you?
Hey there. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good. Doc, I'm going to do your bio and then we're going to dive right in, okay?
Sounds good.
Dr. Jolene Brighten is a functional naturopathic medical doctor and nutritional biochemist with a focus in women's endocrine health. She's recognized as a leading expert in post-birth control syndrome and the long-term side effects associated with hormonal contraceptives. Dr. Brighten is the author of Beyond the Pill, a 30-day plan to support women on birth control, help them transition off, and then eliminate symptoms of post-birth control syndrome. She is a speaker, women's health advocate, and a medical advisor for one of the first data-driven apps to offer women personalized birth control recommendations. Dr. Brighten, can you just elaborate a little bit on your bio so our audience can get a little better feel of who you are?
Yeah. So what parts would you like some elaboration? Because I'm like, I could go in a lot of directions.
How you got to where you are in terms of your different specialties and degrees in a short manner, leading up quickly to your new book.
Yeah. Well, the Cliff Notes version is I was a sick kid got very interested in nutritional health and gut healing until the day I realized that women's medicine was mostly done to women instead of done with them, which propelled me to go into women's medicine and study that. And having a background in nutritional biochemistry, dealing with complex hormone chemistry was just a no-brainer. I'm like, of course, I love this nerdy stuff. And after, several years of working with women prescribing hormonal birth control in a homeless youth clinic, I actually swore it off. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to talk about birth control anymore. Until in my private practice, my patients started coming to me because I got known as the doctor who believed women's stories about hormonal birth control. Coming from a research background, I decided to start documenting and creating protocols, which I followed and I share in Beyond the Pill. Along with my patients, we built these protocols together in what I observed to be post-birth control syndrome, in that the majority, if not all of women, struggle to come off of hormonal birth control. And as a 10-year pill user who also developed post-birth control syndrome, it was a bit of comfort to know that I was not alone and the symptoms were not in my head. There was also a lot of things about hormonal birth control that I wish I would have known. I'm a first-generation college student, and I went all the way to become a doctor, and part of that is because I had the tool of hormonal birth control. But at the same time, I really wish someone would have told me about the side effects so that I could have been caring for my body and taking care of my health, and know that there's a root cause to all of those symptoms that I was having that drove me to go on to hormonal birth control in the first place.
Yeah, that little explanation kind of dives into just about every question I have for you. So my first question, I'm a practicing chiropractor going into my 18th year. I take care of a lot of young mothers, children, pregnant women, and I see women struggle with the pill, going on, coming off, trying and having trouble getting pregnant, wondering if they should take it after gyno suggested it for a heavy flow, etc. I assume these are all of the reasons, or many of the reasons, why you wrote this incredibly important book.
Yeah, and if we look at the surveys that have been done, we've come to understand that the majority of women, so more than half of us, and some estimates are as much as 65%, are using hormonal birth control for symptom management. So this was a pharmaceutical originally designed to help women, postpone pregnancy, get pregnant when they were ready, or, help them space out their pregnancies. And now it's become, I do these air quotes, the pill for every female ill. And if you're a healthcare practitioner, then you see mostly women, statistically speaking. And so
right.
I'm sure you see this all the time where, the doctor's like, you have a heavy period, therefore you need the pill. But there's no question or discussion as to why you have that heavy period to begin with. And so that's something, I wrote Beyond the Pill to not only help women understand the side effects and take care of their body if they're on birth control, but to understand there's solutions beyond the pill, that if you have heavy periods, so for example, there's an entire chapter dedicated to, here are the symptoms, the hormonal symptoms you're having. This is what might be causing them. This is what your doctor should be investigating. These are the labs that you want to have done. And right now, this is what you, reading this, can do. Because as we know, natural therapies take time. And if you have a hormone imbalance, you don't have time to waste. You need to start doing that right away. And so I offered all those solutions. And at the same time, wanting women to know there is life beyond the pill, that when you come off of it, you can have clear skin, you can have easy periods, you can get pregnant again, but it may take some effort and some work on your part, like all great things in this life that we enjoy. But, as you were saying, there's a lot of women who, they struggle when they come off of hormonal birth control, and things like, acne, for example, that drives women right back on it. And it makes them feel like they're almost addicted to this pharmaceutical, because without it, they can't even have clear skin. And so I very much detailed, how can you come off of hormonal birth control, get rid of those symptoms of post-birth control syndrome, and leverage your symptoms to understand what your body's saying so you can get at the root cause of that.
You've mentioned post-birth control syndrome. Now, I've never heard that terminology before, yet I'm very familiar with it. Is there a defined definition for what that is yet?
Yeah, so I define this in my book. We've yet to have a study that comes out and says post-birth control syndrome, but we have lots of studies that are supporting what happens when you come off of after birth control, so post-birth control. And with that, post-birth control syndrome is a collection of signs and symptoms. So for anyone listening, when we say syndrome in medicine, like the most common one people associate with is like irritable bowel syndrome, which means like you have constipation, you can have diarrhea, you can have both, you can have gas and bloating. And so it's this collection of signs and symptoms that go together. Now, with the birth control, it shows up about 4 to 6 months on average after coming off of hormonal birth control. But certainly there's women who present with symptoms sooner, and there's women who they have some symptoms and then they're like, I can live with it. And then a year later, they're like, I cannot live with this. Like now things feel like they're out of control. And when we understand that hormonal birth control, so the conventional narrative to women is that hormonal birth control works on your reproductive system and that's about it. And that's the only system it affects. But when we understand it impacts your gut, your liver, your brain, it impacts your cardiovascular system, your metabolic system. Like it is impacting every single system in your body. Then you can come to understand how post-birth control syndrome can present with an array of symptoms. And that can be things like new onset of gut symptoms, migraines, headaches, brain fog. You can start to have thyroid issues, adrenal issues. And of course, you can have those period problems come up or any of the, typical associated female hormone patterns of imbalance. So it shows up in a lot of ways, which can make it really tricky for doctors and women to understand what is going on. And with that, I think it's also important to note that post-birth control syndrome can sometimes be the return of symptoms that you had before. So if you started hormonal birth control to mask acne, for example, or irregular periods, that may come back when you come off of hormonal birth control. But in post-birth control syndrome, you can absolutely present with brand new symptoms. I've seen patients who they had periods like clockwork, ever since they started their period at age 14. They go on the pill when they're going to college at age 18. They come off of it 5 years, 10 years later, and now suddenly they have no period whatsoever. This is known as post-pill amenorrhea. And they'll sometimes come to me. I've had women come to me 4 years, 8 years, 10 years after having no period off of hormonal birth control. And we've been able to restore their period by working with their body and working really on the foundational things that I teach within my book, Beyond the Pill.
Well, you could see after that explanation how you really need somebody that's familiar with this because it could be confused with so many different things. And you could end up on more medications than you wanted or multiple medications. And I'm sure you see that often as well.
Mm-hmm. And, if you talk to pharmacists, like they're the ones kind of at ground zero seeing all of this, in which you'll talk to pharmacists. And I've had a lot of pharmacists reach out to me and share with me that they will fill the prescription for like the pill, for example. And then the next thing they notice is that woman's coming back later and she's either getting, some kind of mood altering medication for anxiety or depression, or maybe she's getting a proton pump inhibitor because now she's got heartburn. And the other thing we see commonly is that women will be put on thyroid medication because there's several ways in which hormonal birth control impacts your thyroid health. And that's why and thyroid health is so important in women's health altogether. That's why there's an entire chapter in my book just dedicated to helping women understand their thyroid, get the right lab testing, but also take steps every single day to optimize thyroid health.
Yeah, we've had multiple people on the podcast talking about the thyroid, how misunderstood it is, how important it is, what lab markers to look at. So, I've noticed that chapter in the book, and I'm very happy that it's very, very thrilled that it's in there for sure. And a little bit more of a glimpse. Some strategic steps that women can do once coming off the pill to heal their body. Generic, not real, because every woman is different. There's multiple different types of birth control. But what are some generic things that women can do coming off that'll really help their bodies heal?
Right. So, just like you're saying, it's very individualized. And one of those individualized things is like figuring out what your hormone imbalance is, because for some women, it's estrogen. Others, it's testosterone, or it might be cortisol or thyroid. But, across the board, eating a nutrient-dense diet is definitely going to be part of this protocol. And the reason for that is because hormonal birth control depletes your nutrients. So when you're on hormonal birth control, it takes, extra effort on your body's part to detoxify all of those hormones. And we see deficiencies starting to come up in things like magnesium, zinc, vitamin B6, folate, B12, selenium. So there's a lot of nutrients that get depleted. And so a nutrient-dense diet where you're eating plenty of leafy green vegetables. So I like to see 6 to 9 servings of vegetables. Everybody's going to feel better if they're doing that. Making sure you're getting high quality protein. Your liver cannot detoxify your hormones if you are not eating high quality protein. And then considering taking a multivitamin or prenatal, because you really need to rebuild those nutrient stores. You're going to feel a lot better when you do that. You're going to have more energy. Your brain fog is going to start clearing. You're going to find that weight isn't as much of a struggle. You can start to rehabilitate your libido that likely got lost on hormonal birth control. And, if you look at the piece with acne alone, if you can get your zinc levels back up and start eating things like, oysters are actually a great source of zinc. And if you don't like that, you might want to choose a different meat for that. But that can help, with your testosterone levels. It can certainly help with your skin and bringing your immune system back into regulation, because there is immune system dysfunction that can happen with hormonal birth control. And then, of course, we gotta sleep. So, and it's not just you'll have to get 8 hours of sleep every night. But for women, we are very, very much affected by the light cycle. So we know this because women, we tend to cycle with the moon. And I talk all about this in my book, whether you're ovulating with the new moon or the full moon and what that really means. But, the street lights that we're inundated with, there's so much pollution on this planet, but light pollution is another one. Any disruption in your circadian rhythm can disrupt ovulation. We now know through studies that have come out, although Chinese medicine has been talking about this forever, but through studies that have come out, that if you are not getting, adequate sleep and you're in a completely dark room and you're not safeguarding that circadian rhythm, your liver doesn't actually do its job properly. You don't detoxify the way that you are really designed to. And so sleep is something that we absolutely have to safeguard in all of this. And then, of course, if you're having any gut issues, the gut is really the key to everything, and hormonal birth control can disrupt. You have the book, so you read all the ways that hormonal birth control can disrupt your gut health. And if that's the case for you, you've got to start working on optimizing your gut, which may mean bringing in a quality probiotic, taking things into your diet like sauerkraut, coconut kefir, getting bone broth in, and making sure that you're eating in a relaxed environment so you can actually digest your food. There's a lot of people eating really great foods, but they're doing it on the run. And if you're not eating in an environment that's conducive to absorbing your nutrients, well, then you're not getting the full benefit of them. We are not what we eat. We are what we absorb.
You mentioned a few things there. One, it's amazing how everything swings back around to sleep, right? It doesn't matter.
Right?
It doesn't matter what you talk about. Sleep is important, is maybe the most important, no matter what. And you also mentioned testosterone. Testosterone is always linked as the male hormone, but it's very important for women. The levels are much lower, but that's something that's either misunderstood or not understood at all, that testosterone is important for women too, in many cases very important.
Absolutely. And that's something that's really troubling about hormonal birth control, is that it's enough hormones to shut down your reproductive system. So that's going to shut down testosterone production. But we now have come to understand that hormonal birth control actually alters your liver, at the genetic level, so that it changes the expression of the genes to produce more sex hormone binding globulin, which grabs onto your sex hormones. Is a very good mechanism when you have all this excess estrogen coming in, synthetic estrogen that is, but it's a problem because then it starts grabbing onto your testosterone. Now your level's already down. It's grabbing onto your testosterone. Your libido is tanking. But what follows next is that, testosterone's involved in our mood. So we start falling out of love with our life. We have lack of motivation. We are feeling fatigued because of testosterone declining. And then we start losing muscle mass. And we're wondering okay, why is it that I'm doing all the right things, I'm eating right, I'm exercising, yet my body composition is changing? And this is something that can affect women even after they come off of it, because the studies that have followed women, they followed them 5 years out and have found the sex hormone binding globulin never returns to a pre-pill state. So it stays forever elevated. At least that's what they concluded in the research. Clinically, I found, epigenetics for the win. There's a lot of things that a woman can do in order to optimize her nutrition and her lifestyle to change that genetic expression, bring that sex hormone binding globulin down to a normal level, and be able to optimize and really balance out that testosterone. Of course, too much of it, we have acne, hair loss, and we're, on our head, and we're growing hair on our chin, chest, abdomen. Nobody likes any of that, but not enough of it. And now your bones, your heart, your brain are starting to suffer. And so we really have to find that optimal level. And as women come off of hormonal birth control, sometimes that testosterone comes back with a vengeance, and sometimes it doesn't come back at all, and you can't actually get those levels to a healthy state to stimulate those tissues. And this is where women will really struggle with the weight loss component, because they're like, well, what's going on here? I'm doing everything right, but they can't actually stimulate the generation of muscle tissue. And with that, they can't shift their metabolism to be more metabolically active, so they're burning more calories throughout the day. And if you are someone who right now is like eye rolling and being like, oh, weight loss talk again, one thing I'll say is don't shame anybody for wanting to lose weight, okay? So that's one piece. But the other piece is that there's studies that correlate, like the more muscle mass you have in your thighs, the less likely you are to develop dementia. Like that's no joke right there. Like you want longevity for your brain, build yourself some meaty thighs. And if you've been on a medication that's impeding that, in this weight loss conversation, it's really a body composition conversation in which you're ensuring the longevity and the health of your lifespan.
Man, that was well said. That was fantastic. How about a little bit the reverse? Say if you choose or you need to be on the pill, what could women do to potentially offset some of the possible side effects?
Totally. And I go through this in great detail in my book, because I think it's 100% a woman's right to choose the best contraceptive for herself. And even if you want to use hormonal birth control because you're like, I don't want to deal with my symptoms, that's totally your choice. Like, it's not for me to tell you what to do with your body. So, with that, if we understand what hormonal birth control can do and how it leads to those negative side effects, then we can begin to mitigate that. Now, number one is you need to track your symptoms, because if you start hormonal birth control or you're on it right now and you're starting to have side effects, you're starting to feel anxious, you're having insomnia, you're having mood swings, depression, you're feeling gas and bloating, like things are just not right in your body, it's worth a conversation with your doctor, because it may very well be that you need to transition off and do something different. But if you are wanting to stay on it and things are going well, make sure you're taking that prenatal or multivitamin. You have got to have your diet dialed in. That is non-negotiable. But, in my clinical experience, you can't out-diet hormonal birth control. And what that means is that you're depleting nutrients in such a way that you've got to bring on extra nutritional support. The other thing you'll want to do is make sure you're on a quality probiotic and you're eating prebiotic foods. So hormonal birth control has been compared to antibiotics in terms of how it lowers microbial diversity. And let's all keep in mind that antibiotics are meant to be used like 7 days, 14 days, not 10 years, 20 years. So keep that in mind. Decreased diversity in the microbiome is a surefire way to head towards chronic disease. So getting yourself a probiotic and making sure you're feeding them by eating a variety of fibers, like eating things like, burdock root, and getting in, great fibers through like Jerusalem artichoke, fresh ground flax seeds. That can go a really long way. Now, the other thing is that hormonal birth control hits your liver hard. That is the main organ that packages up all that synthetic estrogen and prepares it to move out of your body by way of the gut. You've got to take care of your liver. With the introduction of hormonal birth control is when we saw an increased rise in benign liver tumors. Now, they're benign. There is an association with liver cancer, but these tumors for the most part tend to be benign. But they're prone to rupture. And if anybody knows the liver, then they know there is a lot of blood flowing through the liver. So that's no joke. And if there's anything I'm saying to you that you start to feel afraid about, you can grab me on the pill, you can get an appointment with your doctor. Like my whole, entire message here is be informed, not afraid. Like, don't make fear-based decisions. But if you understand just the things that I said, if you missed before when I was talking about the genetic alterations to liver, you're going to want to rewind this, go back and listen to it again. If you understand all that's going on, then you understand that you need to support your liver. And so doing that by bringing in cruciferous vegetables as part of your diet, considering supplementation with something that has DIM, broccoli seed extract, and making sure that you're getting quality B vitamins. Those are depleted by hormonal birth control. You will not run your liver detox pathways without those B vitamins. And then, of course, you've got to do lab testing. So as long as you're on hormonal birth control, and I outlined all of this in Beyond the Pill, your doctor needs to be monitoring your symptoms, but your doctor doesn't live in your body. You live in your body. So you are number one to monitor your symptoms and check in on what's normal. But your doctor can monitor your labs and do that at least annually, checking for what's going on with inflammation. We know hormonal birth control is inflammatory, and it can lead to insulin resistance and blood sugar dysregulation. So checking on those is a good idea. Checking your full thyroid panel and looking for nutrient depletions is an important component. There's a test called a comp metabolic panel. Most doctors are familiar with this. It'll check your glucose, but it'll also check your electrolytes and your liver function and your gallbladder. The liver and gallbladder take a big hit on hormonal birth control, but there's also alterations. Certain forms of hormonal birth control are actually potassium sparing. That means you'll hold on to potassium. You'll get alterations in those electrolytes. Those can lead to arrhythmias and even heart attacks. And so, you don't have to be afraid because you have the knowledge to be screening these things in your body and to understand what is going on. So certainly, within Beyond the Pill, I give you a bunch of recipes. I give you diet and lifestyle recommendations. These are the steps that you take every single day that move you closer to health and keep you there. But you're going to need to bring on some supplements as well because you're on a medication. And it's something that sometimes doctors will say like, oh, well, why would you tell a woman to take this multivitamin or prenatal because she's on hormonal birth control? Like, it's just a medication and, it's not that big of a deal. She can do it with diet. And it's like, well, if someone was on metformin, you would tell them to take B12. I mean, that's a diabetic drug that depletes B12. Like, you would tell them to take that, right? Oh, yeah, I would. Yeah. So it's like the same thing. Just because we hand out hormonal birth control like it's candy doesn't mean that it's like candy. Like it does have an effect in the body. And the other piece of that is that if you are a woman who's in your reproductive years taking hormonal birth control, then you've got to understand that hormonal birth control is depleting folate and B12. Now, if you get pregnant, by the time you take that pregnancy test and you're pregnant, your baby already needed that folate and already needed that B12. And so you want to make sure you have those optimal levels because that's going to protect your health, but it's also going to protect baby's health because, it wasn't until I landed in the emergency room on hormonal birth control, having a ruptured cyst. And I was in the emergency room, and I'll never forget this. They were like, oh, this could be an ectopic pregnancy. We need you to take a pregnancy test. I was like, I can't be pregnant. I'm on the pill. And they laughed at me, and not in a mean way, but they were like, no, like it's not that effective. And I was like, my doctor says 99%. And they're like, no, like that's not true. Because with typical use, it's 91% effective. But most of us aren't even told that. And so there is always this risk that you could become pregnant. Nature's way smarter than us. It does find a way. And so at the minimum, making sure that you have that quality prenatal or multivitamin to support your health and to support potential pregnancy is a really important piece of being on hormonal birth control.
Yeah, that's incredibly important. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, you have to safeguard against potential pregnancy, and particularly if they're nutrient depleting. Man, that's so important. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Two final questions. They're kind of fun and easy. From waking to sleeping, what is your daily routine?
Okay, so first thing, I wake up and I do 5 belly breaths minimum. And I try not to think about and set the tone for the day by thinking about what I need to do. And instead I like to roll over and do some gratitude journaling and get myself in that space of feeling really, really grateful for my life as much as I can. And then I tend to go into, if I can exercise first thing in the morning, I'm a mom, so it doesn't always happen, but I like to try to exercise first thing in the morning, get into a meditation for at least 5 to 10 minutes. And then whenever possible, I like to just carve out time for thinking, where I really like to just spend some time with my thoughts, exploring things, thinking about, whatever I want, and having that time to kind of, that's where I really set the tone for the entire day in terms of thinking about, okay, here's what I'm going to do, but also let me just think about the ways I want to come about these things. And then I have a breakfast. It's usually, it's a bit more of a ketogenic breakfast, in the fact that it's protein, higher fat, and then, usually leafy green vegetables. So I eat a really high quality breakfast, and that's coming out of, fasting, usually 12 to 14 hours, sometimes longer, just depending on how I'm feeling or what's going on. And then I go into my work day. And so my work day, might be doing interviews with people like you, or, writing articles, meeting with patients. It just all, I have a very varied, that's a great way to put it, very varied, work life. And then in the evening, I like to spend, with my family. Whenever I'm working from home, we try to have lunch together, and we try to do dinner together as often as possible as well. And we try to close down the kitchen, 6 p.m. is like really the cutoff, so I can do my intermittent fasting. And then that's just like, the time to unwind. I'll spend time with my child, put him to bed, and then, getting into, some relaxing and restorative practices. So 2 hours before bed is my minimum of wearing my amber glasses. But typically, as soon as the sun goes down, my amber glasses are on, because that raises your melatonin, helps your cortisol come down, as it should. And then I'll do things where, I might have a stretching practice, do some, more meditation, might take a nice bath. But, quite honestly, sometimes I'm inspired and I feel creative at night, and I'll launch into writing or working on another project that, well, some people would say is very stimulating, is something that helps me through my creative, outlet. So, that's a bit of my typical day. It's just, you have children as well. So, it all just depends on what those mini humans like to throw your way. But yeah, that's kind of what my day looks like.
Yeah, we have some very similar patterns, but the audience loves to hear, and I like to hear what people's routines are, because I think they're really, really, really important. Lastly, the link to the book and all that kind of stuff will be in the show notes, of course, but how can the audience get in touch with you, more information? Like, what's the best way?
The main hub is at Dr.Brighten.com. My last name's kind of tricky, so it's Brighten. So you can go to Dr.Brighten.com. I have tons of articles, free resources for you to check out there. You can also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Jolene Brighten. I love hanging out on there. My posts usually tend to be like mini blog posts on there. And then I have an entire YouTube channel that I know we all learn differently. And so I try to have that video version available for people so that they can learn in that way more about their hormones. And then, of course, if you're grabbing the book, I've got a bunch of bonuses for you that you should take advantage of. You can go to beyondthepillbook.com and grab bonuses. We have a lab guide there. We have more recipes for you and all kinds of goodies. Just my way of saying thank you for supporting my mission to really change women's medicine for the better.
Great. Thanks for I didn't know that, so thank you for mentioning that. I'll have to go right there after we get off. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer, your co-host, and you are listening to the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please share this with your friends and encourage them to subscribe on iTunes. You can subscribe to our incredible weekly email at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. Don't forget to check out our newly released BYWG supplement line at our website. And thank you. And as my oldest son Hayden says, be awesome and never unawesome.